We live in interesting times. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Angeles.
And now, let's head on to the news. Europe has become the new epicenter of the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. That is according to the World Health Organization on Friday. Italy is the European country currently suffering the most, with more than 15,000 infections and more than 1,000 fatalities. Take a look.
Europe has now become the epicenter of the pandemic, with more reported cases and deaths than the rest of the world combined, apart from China. More cases are now being reported every day than were reported in China at the height of its epidemic. Any country that looks at the experience of other countries with large epidemics and thinks that won't happen to us is making a deadly mistake. It can happen to any country. Our message to countries continues to be, you must take a comprehensive approach. Not testing alone, not contact tracing alone, not quarantine alone, not social distancing alone. Do it all. Every person must know the signs and symptoms and how to protect themselves and others. Every health worker should be able to recognize this disease, provide care, and know what to do with their patients.
The purpose of social distancing is only to slightly slow down the virus so your health system can cope. The objectives are different. And I think we have to be clear that social distancing measures are not a panacea. Social distancing measures are not going to stop this epidemic. They're not going to stop this pandemic purely in their own right. Blanket travel measures in their own right will do nothing to protect an individual state. In fact, many countries who had outright travel bans early in this response ended up importing cases anyway and may have reacted later than they should have because they assumed travel restrictions would protect them. Perfection is the enemy of the good when it comes to emergency management. Speed trumps perfection. And the problem in society we have at the moment is everyone is afraid of making a mistake. Everyone is afraid of the consequence of error. But the greatest error is not to move.
The overall death toll jumped to more than 5,000, including nearly 1,500 in Europe, with total infections topping 140,000 internationally, according to an AFP tally based on official sources. Italy, the hardest hit country in Europe, recorded its highest one-day toll with 250 deaths over the past 24 hours, while Spain declared a state of alert after its infections raced past 3,000. A raft of European countries shut their borders to foreigners, closed non-essential businesses, restaurants and hotels, and museums, and banned public gatherings. France, the world's most visited country, closed the Eiffel Tower and Louvre over what President Macron called the worst health crisis in France in a century. Meanwhile, the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, believes that the coronavirus represents a major shock for the EU economy. At a press conference in Brazil, von der Leyen urges people to work together to make sure that the coronavirus is as short and as limited as possible and it doesn't create permanent damage to the economies. Take a look.
The coronavirus pandemic is testing us all. Institutions, governments, health systems, economies, but the coronavirus pandemic is most of all testing people. This is not only an unprecedented challenge to our healthcare systems, but also a major shock to our economies. The shock is temporary, but we must work together to ensure that it is as short and as limited as possible. And it does not create permanent damage to our economies. And for any measure to be effective, they need to be coordinated at EU level. Member states, especially neighbouring ones, need to work very closely together. In this way, and it's the only way, we can make sure that our citizens receive the health care that they need immediately, wherever they are at the moment.
The EU executive on Friday unveiled a raft of measures to protect the European economy from the coronavirus outbreak and promised it would do whatever it takes for hardest hit Italy. The assurances by EU Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen came a day after ECB head Christine Lagarde stoked fury in Rome by implying that shoring up Italy's precarious financial situation was not her job. Take a look.
We are absolutely ready to help Italy with whatever is necessary. This is of utmost importance. This country is severely hit by coronavirus, and we all know that they need help right now. So whatever is necessary, we support. Whatever they need, we will answer.
Italy's debt pile will grow even more after it announced 25 billion euros in extra spending to pull itself out of its crisis. Meanwhile, the COVID-19 pandemic is sparking panic buying in Barcelona, Spain. Businesses and tourism have been hard hit too. Here's Lynn Tumbagedias for the report.
Just like most of the countries in Europe, Barcelona, Spain is also affected by the COVID-19 virus in many ways. The confirmed cases and people under observation increases. Although it is business as usual and public transport are still available for commuters, advisories and guidelines were announced in subway stations to avoid the spread of the COVID-19 disease, such as washing hands frequently, use of sanitizers, and proper way of sneezing. Some supermarkets and grocery stores easily ran out of stock of rice, lentils, and other basic commodities. Many people buy many stocks of daily necessities as the fear of COVID-19 virus continues. In accordance with the statement made this afternoon, the government of Catalonia concerning the closure of educational centers starting March 13. The Philippine Embassy in Madrid, Spain also released an advisory saying that no Filipino has been reported as being under observation. The embassy will be notified by the Spanish authorities if there are Filipinos among the confirmed case. Countries all over the world are issuing new travel restrictions and advisories. In this regard, the Filipino community is advised to set aside travel plans if they feel unwell or have developed respiratory symptoms. If you develop symptoms of acute respiratory infection, it is advised to stay at home. Do not go to the hospital and call 112 for medical services. As a result of the spread of COVID-19 virus, many business establishments, especially those which depends mainly in tourism, were affected, like the hotels, restaurants, and travel agencies. Many hotel employees are saying they have few guests this past few weeks. Mr. Jap Gumangan, cafeteria and restaurant owner, shared how the Spanish government advised things to do on preventing the spread of the disease. Mrs. Modeline Mendoza Mercado, a travel agency employee in Spain, shares her experiences on how COVID-19 affects their job.
Gobyerno po ng Espanya ay maraming mga sinasawang mga instruction sa TV, personal na nagpupunta ang mga sa Departamento ng Sanidad dito sa aking negosyo upang bigyan ako ng mga tagubilin at paalala, lalo tigit na ngayon po na lumalaganap ang coronavirus na ito. Sa akin pong obserbasyon dito sa Espanya ay hindi naman po ganoon ang paglaganap ng virus katulad sa Italia dahil po sa mga kanilang ginagawang preventions na kapaki-pakinabang.
Balik kasi sa ngayon po, ang epekto nito sa trabaho namin sa travel agency, una po, marami talaga ngayon, mas marami kaming trabaho compare sa normalidad. Kasi nga po, una kasi yung mga tao dahil sa fear at saka yun po, sa fear nila sa magkaroon ng virus.
From Barcelona, Spain, I'm Lynn Bautista Tumbaga Diaz, and I'm always one with 25.
Meanwhile, staying in Spain, the government is to declare a state of alert over the rapid spread of the deadly coronavirus, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said on Friday, after infections soared to over 4,200 with 121 dead. The government would adopt a series of extraordinary measures in order to mobilize all the resources of state to better protect the health of all its citizens, he said, pointing to both public and private resources, as well as civilian and military. Following Sanchez's comments, the Madrid regional authorities ordered all shops in the region be shut down from Saturday through to March 26, covering the state of alert period, save for those selling food, chemists, and petrol stations in order to slow the virus spread. Meanwhile, Paris' top tourist sites, including the Louvre and the Eiffel Tower, closed because of the coronavirus, as France said it was banning all gatherings of more than 100 people. The country, the most visited in the world, is one of Europe's hardest hit by the coronavirus pandemic, with more than 2,800 infections and 61 deaths. Its tourism and cultural sectors have been particularly hard hit, as the government has ramped up containment measures over the outbreak, closing schools and banning large gatherings. Both the Louvre and the Eiffel Tower will remain closed until further notice, while the Palace of Versailles said it was also shutting its doors. Meanwhile, Britain has adopted a light-touch approach to coronavirus measures, opting so far not to shut schools with the aim of staggering demand on the health service and developing herd immunity in the population. But the strategy is controversial. The government stepped up its response to COVID-19, which officials warn may have infected up to 10,000 people in Britain, by asking those with mild symptoms to self-isolate for a week. But Prime Minister Boris Johnson said it was not yet time to follow other European countries in closing schools or even banning large events. Health experts say moving too soon could be disruptive and only have limited effect. Take a look.
We are considering the question of banning major public events such as sporting fixtures. And the scientific advice, as we've said over the last couple of weeks, is that this banning such events will have little effect on the spread. We have been guided by the science, and we will do the right thing at the right time. We are not, repeat not, closing schools now. The scientific advice is that this could do more harm than good at this time. But of course, we're keeping this under review, and this, again, may change as the disease spreads.
If you start too early, and then people's enthusiasm runs out just about the peak, which is exactly the time that we want people to be doing these interventions, that is actually not a productive way to do it. So we do need to do it at the last point it is reasonable, so people will maintain their energy and enthusiasm to get through what will be quite difficult things to do. It sounds trivial to say, stay at home if you have minor symptoms. Wait until you're doing it.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for coming.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has said that the UK could be included in the Europe-wide travel ban after 208 new cases were reported today. Take a look.
Well, that was recommended to me by a group of professionals, and we are looking at it based on the new numbers that are coming out, and we may have to include them in the list of countries that we will, you could say, ban or whatever it is during this period of time. But yeah, the numbers have gone up fairly precipitously over the last 24 hours, so we may be adding that, and we may be adding a couple of others, and we may frankly start thinking about taking some off.
U.S. President Donald Trump declared a national state of emergency as the World Health Organization named Europe the new epicenter of the coronavirus, with countries sealing borders, shutting schools, and canceling events in a frenzied attempt to slow the pandemic. Let's listen in.
To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency. Two very big words. The action I am taking will open up access to up to $50 billion. We've been working very hard on this. We've made tremendous progress. And as you know, Europe was just designated as the hotspot right now, and we closed that border a while ago. So that was lucky, or through talent or through luck, call it whatever you want. But through a very collective action and shared sacrifice, national determination, we will overcome the threat of the virus.
President Trump said that he was declaring a national emergency that would open up $50 billion in federal funding. The national emergency would also confer a broad new authority on the U.S. Health Secretary to waive a series of regulations, including on telemedicine or allowing hospitals to bring additional staff on board. U.S. authorities have come under fire for lagging behind in developing test kits, which leading health experts have said allowed the virus to spread beyond the country's ability to detect it. But President Trump denied any responsibility for delays in making testing available. Let's listen in.
Yeah, no, I don't take responsibility at all, because we were given a set of circumstances, and we were given rules, regulations, and specifications from a different time. Wasn't meant for this kind of an event with the kind of numbers that we're talking about. And what we've done is redesigned it very quickly with the help of the people behind me, and we're now in very, very strong shape. I think we'll be announcing, as I said, Sunday night, and this will start very quickly, and we'll have the ability to do in the millions over a very, very quick period of time. So no, and what we have done, and we are going to be leaving a very indelible print for the future in case something like this happens again. But it was and that's not the fault of anybody, and frankly, the old system worked very well for smaller numbers, much smaller numbers, but not for these kind of numbers. Tony, maybe you'd like to say something?
Will you have,
Tony,
yes, please, by Sunday night, will every American be able to get a test?
So just to reiterate what I said to many of you multiple times, it's a dissonance of a system. The system was not designed for what it was designed for. It worked very well. The CDC designed a good system. If you want to get the kind of blanket testing and availability that anybody can get it, or you could even do surveillance to find out what the penetrance is, you have to embrace the private sector. And this is exactly what you're seeing, because you can't do it without it. So when I said that, I meant the system was not designed for what we need. Now, looking forward, the system will take care of it.
Later on Friday, U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi, House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi announced that she had reached an agreement with the White House on stimulus legislation to help people impacted by the outbreak. And that includes 2 weeks of paid sick leave and up to 3 months of paid family and medical leave, free virus testing for those without insurance, and food aid. Meanwhile, Dr. Anthony Fauci indicated that the coronavirus may remain virulent for another 8 to 9 weeks. Friday saw disruptions to everyday life. Several cities and states have banned large gatherings. Businesses are requiring their workers to stay at home, and Americans are generally being encouraged to limit their movements in an effort to slow the spread of the virus. Let's listen in.
This question is for Doctors Fauci and Burke. Birx. Dr. Fauci, based on what you currently know, what is the trajectory for when this outbreak will peak? How long will the American people have to remain on this emergency footing?
So when you have an outbreak like this, particularly if you're trying to interfere with it, it's really impossible to predict the time element of when it's going to peak and when it's naturally going to go down. So if you look at the situation where countries really did not get to the point of trying to contain and mitigate very well, you see a peak over several weeks and then down again over other several weeks. What we're trying to do with the efforts that we're doing is to blunt that peak. And I mentioned it many times, and I think it's important and appropriate for me to mention it again because it answers your question. When you talk about preventing infections from without in, which is the kind of travel restrictions we're talking about, then how do you handle what you already have in your country? You continue some sort of containment, but you also do mitigation, and you try to proportion it to the areas where there are the most infections. The success of that and how much you make this turn into this is going to give you the amount of time. If we're successful, it'll be less. If we're not successful, it's going to be more. But these kind of things generally run out in a few months. Hopefully, we'll make it several weeks, 8, 9, whatever weeks. But I can't give you a number because it depends on how successful we are.
A multicultural festival, a concert by pop singer Mariah Carey, and a series of collegiate basketball tournaments. These were supposed to draw thousands of visitors to Hawaii and generate income in the local economy. However, in just 1 week, these events and many more were either postponed or canceled due to the uncertainty over the coronavirus outbreak. And according to experts, Hawaii state government could lose hundreds of millions of dollars as a result. Hawaii correspondent Alfred Asenas provides a recap of recent events. Take a look.
The 3rd of March was a key turning point for several events or decisions in relation to some events that were supposed to take place actually this week and last weekend. The first one was this annual Honolulu Festival, which normally takes place this time in March for several days and participated by various cultural groups from Japan, which is the largest group. Also, you have Korea, China, even the Philippines. That had to be canceled, and that was a tough decision, frustrating a lot of cultural groups, including those from the Philippines. The second one is the Mariah Carey concert that was supposed to take place this week that got pushed further down later in the year in November because of travel concerns. Moving forward to March 6th, that's when Hawaii announced its first confirmed case of COVID-19, in which an elderly man, after cruising on the Grand Princess, which sailed through Hawaii to Mexico. From there, he flew back to Oahu, and then he became ill and had to be checked in at Kaiser Permanente in Honolulu, where he was pronounced to have been diagnosed COVID-19. He is still under isolation and under monitoring. 2 days later, on March 8th, a second presumptive case of COVID-19 was confirmed, in which another elderly man traveled to Washington State, already feeling ill, and then coming back here and been diagnosed also with COVID-19. Moving forward to March 10th, actually. Facilities like the Philippine Consulate General in Honolulu made the announcement that starting on the following Monday, March 16th, all their services will be by appointment only. Moving forward, until further notice, they will not receive any walk-ins. In addition to that, what they normally do in any given year is to visit these islands around Hawaii and even as far south as American Samoa, as part of their outreach when they provide services of various kinds to Filipino communities and those who need the services from the Philippine Consulate. That is temporarily suspended because of travel concerns. In essence, the state government has announced it will step up its efforts to test various communities throughout the state to determine whether there are whether there are other cases that are lingering out and about here in the Aloha State. So that's where we stand right now, and we continue to monitor the impact, one of which already involves the entire tourism industry. In fact, a report from the University of Hawaii is estimating that a ballpark figure of 6,000 jobs could be lost because of this virus outbreak that's going on around the world. And that's the snapshot situation that we have here in these islands. Reporting from Hawaii, I'm Alfred Asenas, Eagle News, 1 with 25.
Thank you, Alfred. Let's go over now to San Francisco, where the coronavirus fears has sent shoppers into panic buying mode. Our EBC correspondent Emmanuel Andaya is in a shopping center to show us what's happening there. Manny?
So there's a line here in Costco, Costco Business, this Costco Business Center, and over there, that is already a long line. See, the line is going all the way around the corner to, it is, the time here is, by the way, 7 o'clock in the morning. Almost 7 o'clock in the morning. It's 10 minutes before 7 o'clock. And there's a line, and the line is going to be filled up. So it feels like a Black Friday here at the Costco Business Center. 7 o'clock in the morning, and nakapila na, nag-uumpisa na ang panic buying. Yesterday, we went to a regular Costco. There's sold out toilet paper, sold out paper towel. There's any type of citrus type na formula. There's none. Wala na. Wala na. Sold out na vinegar, sold out na canned goods. That's in the regular Costco. So, sold out na rin ang lahat ng sanitizer. Sold out na rin ang disinfectant wipes. I was lucky to actually get the last 2 throughout the whole Costco sa kahapon. So I'm here hoping na makakahanap pa ako ng and bottled water. They're being sold out now, and it's only limited to 2 cases per family or per customer. So that's the status right now, and it's hitting hard here.
Eagle News will be right back. Stay tuned.
Visiting the Philippines, Manila or Quezon City is a popular destination. But oftentimes the hustle and bustle of the city can be more stressful on your vacation. So when you feel the need to reconnect to nature or relax again, there's a beautiful oasis just outside of the city called the Garden at Ciudad de Victoria. That you can see here include hydrangea, snapdragon, and stargazers. They're truly beautiful. The gardens at Ciudad de Victoria are so peaceful, tranquil, and beautiful that it's become a haven for young couples and a very popular venue for engagement photos. The next time you want an escape from the big city, the garden at Ciudad de Victoria is a wonderful place to visit.
Landmarks, Linggo, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi.
Meanwhile, the Department of Health confirmed 34 new cases of the coronavirus disease, bringing the total number in the country to 98 as of Saturday. On the same day, the DOH also reported 2 new COVID-19 deaths, bringing the total number of fatalities to 8. While further details are being polished, the DOH advised the public that the Philippine Heart Center, or PHC, is limiting its services after several health personnel were exposed to a confirmed COVID-19 case. Patient number 37, who died last March 12, was admitted at PHC, according to the DOH. In other news, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau tells reporters that he has no symptoms and is feeling good after his wife, Sophie Trudeau, tested positive for COVID-19. Speaking from the Rideau Cottage in Ottawa, Prime Minister Trudeau reassures Canadians, saying the government will help them financially and urges citizens to cut back on all but essential foreign travel to help contain the spread of the virus. Let's listen in.
Yesterday, I shared with you that my wife Sophie was being tested for COVID-19, and that test did come back positive. Sophie's symptoms remain mild, but we are following medical advice and taking every precaution. She will remain in isolation for the time being. Upon my doctor's recommendation, I will remain in self-isolation for 14 days. I want to be clear, I have no symptoms, and I'm feeling good. And technology allows me to work from home. In terms of advice I've gotten from medical professionals, it was explained to me that as long as I do not show any symptoms at all, there is no value in having me tested. Earlier today, Ministers Blair, Haidu and Garneau announced that Canada has advised Canadians to curtail non-essential international travel and that the cruise season is suspended until July and that we are bringing in additional screening measures at airports. The agreement we reached with other parties to suspend the House today also still gives us the flexibility to do the things we need to do in order to support Canadians. No one should have to worry about paying rent, buying groceries, or additional childcare because of COVID-19. We will help Canadians financially.
To New Zealand now, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern announced that international visitors must now self-isolate for 14 days upon arrival in the country to help slow the spread of the new coronavirus. Let's listen in.
As of midnight Sunday, every person entering New Zealand, including returning New Zealand citizens and residents, will be required to enter self-isolation for 14 days. Everybody. The Pacific are exempted from this measure. They are the only ones. Alongside Israel and a small number of Pacific islands who have effectively closed their borders, this decision will mean New Zealand will have the widest ranging and toughest border restrictions of any country in the world. It is not realistic for New Zealand to only have a handful of cases. The international evidence proves that it is not realistic, and so we must plan and prepare for more cases. But the scale of how many cases we get and how fast we get them is something we should do as much as we can to slow. We must go hard and we must go early. We must do everything we can to protect the health of New Zealanders. There's no doubt this will have a significant impact on New Zealand's economy, but our view is the best way to support the economy is to make sure that we reduce the impacts of COVID-19 as much as we can, which is why we're taking these measures today.
She said there everyone, all arrivals will go into self-isolation. New Zealand has already cancelled several major events, including a memorial planned Sunday to mark the first anniversary of the Christchurch mosque shootings, in which 51 people died. Ardern also said more general restrictions on public gatherings would be imposed, but details had not yet been finalized. Now, Pacific Island nations have not yet recorded any confirmed cases of COVID-19, with the exception of French Polynesia, where one person was tested positive. Air New Zealand said it was reviewing the impact of the measures announced on Saturday and will adjust its capacity accordingly. The flag carrier has already scrapped its earnings guidance and amid plummeting demand.
But the scale of
In other news now, Chan Kim-man, veteran Hong Kong pro-democracy leader and sociology professor, is released from jail after serving 11 months for his role in organizing a wave of peaceful protests 6 years ago. Take a look. Now, he was greeted by applause and cheers by dozens of supporters outside the city's UK prison. Chan Kim-man was sentenced in April last year over his role in the 2014 Umbrella Movement, a 79-day occupation of 3 key inspections in the financial hub, calling for universal suffrage. His jailing last year came just weeks before Hong Kong was engulfed by much larger and more violent pro-democracy protests that raged for 7 straight months. The rallies and clashes have largely died down, partly due to exhaustion and high arrests, but also because of the emergence of the coronavirus. But protesters have vowed to keep their movement going until their core demands are met, including an independent inquiry into police brutality, an amnesty for more than 7,000 people arrested, and fully free elections. Another big story this week was disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein, who was sentenced to 23 years in prison for rape and sexual assault, capping a sensational downfall for the once powerful producer in a landmark case for the #MeToo movement. The judge, issuing a heavy term close to the maximum 29 years allowed, was unmoved by a rambling statement Weinstein made to the court in which he failed to express any remorse for his actions or apologize to the victims. Weinstein's counsel regularly clashed with New York Justice James Burke during the trial, even claiming at one point that he was biased against their client. Let's listen in.
This is what justice looks like. 20 plus 3 years sentence handed down by Judge Burke this morning, after compelling arguments by the prosecution and after arguments by the defense.
Justice. I am overcome with anger at that number. I think that number is a cowardly number to give. I think the judge caved, just as I believe the jury caved, and I am not happy. Your leg to stand on with a large sentence.
He wasn't treated fairly at all. Let's just call it what it is. Not by the court, not by the jury, not by a lot of you. That's what happened, all right? The evidence in this case, we firmly believe did not establish his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about anything else than whether there was reasonable doubt in this case. And to say that there wasn't, based on the defense that we put forward, I think is outrageous. And
because this isn't a happy circumstance to be that we're all here for. But I feel joyous with what Judge Burke decided, and I'm grateful to the jurors and the prosecuting team, the DA's office, and everybody involved, and to all the supporters. Thank you. I hope that the sentence sends a clear message that times have changed and that more women need to speak out for themselves and that men and women need to speak out for each other. We need to show...
3 years. As of now, 22 years, $170 million. Time to break another record and time to get rid of this bloody disease.
York capped a sensational downfall for Weinstein almost 3 years after allegations against him ignited the Me Too movement, made him a pariah, and ended his career. Nearly 90 women, including Angelina Jolie and Salma Hayek, have come forward alleging 40 years of vile predatory behavior by Weinstein. Born in Queens, New York on March 19, 1952, the son of a diamond cutter, Weinstein studied at Buffalo University and initially produced rock concerts until he he and younger brother Bob went into the movie business. They co-founded Miramax Films, a small distribution company named after his mother Miriam and father Max in 1979. Their hits included 1998's Shakespeare in Love, for which Weinstein shared a Best Picture Oscar. The company was sold to Disney in 1993, and the brothers left in 2005 to start up the Weinstein Company. Over the years, Weinstein's films received more than 300 Oscar nominations and 81 statuettes. Eagle News will be right back. Stay tuned.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino.
Alamin ang tamang paraan ng pag-ubo upang mapigilan ang paglaganap ng Coronavirus Disease 2019. Ugaliing magdala ng panyo o tissue. Kung uubo o babahing, takpan ang buong ilong at bibig gamit ang panyo o tissue. Kung walang dalang panyo o tissue, maaaring gamitin ang braso na pantakip. Kung nakararamdam na kailangan umubo o bumahing, agad na dumistansya sa mga tao sa paligid. Huwag dumura kung saan-saan, gumamit ng tissue at itapon sa basurahan. Ugaliin ang paghuhugas ng kamay at paggamit ng alcohol o hand sanitizer upang mamatay ang mikrobyo. Basta't sama-sama at lagi...
We are living during the most extraordinary time in human history.
All transport will go fully electric.
Es wird eine völlig neue Mobilität geben, meine Damen und Herren.
Rev, the new auto show on DW. Getting you into gear on cutting-edge developments.
Wasserstofferzeugung braucht Energie.
We focus on green technology.
Das Auto ist im Betrieb absolut emissionsfrei.
And also feature head-to-heads. And the latest launches.
Das Fahrgefühl war gut, er lässt sich sehr gut fahren, er liegt sehr gut auf der Straße.
And mobility stories from around the world.
Mercedes depuis 2005.
Welcome back. We must declare war on this virus, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said in his comments on global response to the spread of the COVID-19, calling on governments to cooperate in order to ensure targeted support for the people and communities most affected by this disease. Watch this.
Dear friends, the upheaval caused by the coronavirus, COVID-19, is all around us. And I know many are anxious, worried, and confused, and that's absolutely natural. We are facing a health threat unlike any other in our lifetimes. Meanwhile, the virus is spreading, the danger is growing, and our health systems, economies, and day-to-day lives are being severely tested. The most vulnerable are the most affected. particularly our elderly and those with pre-existing medical conditions, those without access to reliable health care, and those in poverty or living on the edge. The social and economic fallout from the combination of the pandemic and slowing economies will affect most of us for some months. But the spread of the virus will peak, our economies will recover, and until then we must act together to slow the spread of the virus and look after each other. This is a time for prudence, not panic, science, not stigma, facts, not fear. Even though the situation has been classified as a pandemic, it is one we can control. We can slow down transmissions, prevent infections, and save lives. But that will take unprecedented personal, national, and international action. We must declare war on this virus. And that means countries have a responsibility to gear up, step up, and scale up. By implementing effective containment strategies, by activating and enhancing emergency response systems, by dramatically increasing testing capacity and care for patients, by readying hospitals, ensuring they have the space, supplies, and needed personnel, and by developing life-saving medical interventions. And all of us have a responsibility too, to follow medical advice and take simple, practical steps recommended by health authorities. In addition to being a public health crisis, the virus is infecting the global economy. Financial markets have been hard hit by the uncertainty, global supply chains have been disrupted, investment and consumer demand have plunged, with a real rising risk of a global recession. United Nations economists estimate that the virus could cost the global economy at least $1 trillion this year, and perhaps more.
Economics professor Hui Tang says the coronavirus outbreak is an unforeseen black swan, putting countries in a high-risk situation. Governments now face tough economic decisions over dealing with the pandemic. He says because bold moves to confront the virus entail hefty costs. Watch this.
The coronavirus is a black swan negative shock. No one was expecting that. It would actually put countries into a very risky situation in terms of economic performance. Forward-looking, we have no idea what is going to happen. And now we all cheered the Chinese government for saying they have done the right thing in order to control the continuous spread of the virus. But don't forget, China paid a very high price to essentially shut down the entire economy for more than a month. Whether it is a cost that all the countries should pay, or whether this is a cost that most of the countries can afford to pay, it is a question to be answered. When you look at the U.S., the fundamentals so far seem to be pretty solid. They have had a 2.5% GDP growth rate last year. Unemployment rate in the U.S. has been at the lowest level since the recovery from the previous financial crisis in 2008. The strong fundamentals are going to help the U.S. economy to absorb some of the impact. When you look at Europe, certain countries are either already in a recession or about to get into a recession, so obviously the coronavirus is not going to help. I think the main difficulty the economy is facing is how the virus can be contained. The government is obviously thinking about this question every day. The trade-off is clear. If the containment is bold, like what has been practiced in China, the impact on the economy can be substantial. And that's why we see around the world, in Europe and in the US these days, authorities around the world are trying to wait to get more information before they decide to practice the most stringent containment practices, to ask people to stay at home, to ask people not to go out. All these are going to affect the economy substantially. But notice that the coronavirus has both the supply side and the demand side parts. On the supply side, we have seen shutdowns of factories in China and other Asian countries, and we're going to see negative supply shocks in individual European countries and also in the US as well, when people started to work from home, when people started to cancel all their business meetings, which is going to affect investment. Obviously, there is a negative demand side story, which is partly related to reduction in consumer confidence, and at the same time reduction in economic activities when people try to stay home instead of going out to enjoy the entertainment or eat in the restaurants, all of them are going to affect the wholesale retail businesses around the world as well.
Apple is closing all of its stores outside China until March 27 in a bid to slow the spread of the coronavirus outbreak, CEO Tim Cook said. Cook said the firm had learned from steps taken in China, where the tech giant has just reopened its retail stores. One of those lessons is that the most effective way to minimize risk of the virus's transmission is to reduce density and maximize social distance, he said in a statement late Friday. Apple's online store would remain open, but office staff outside China would be working remotely, if possible, Cook added. The California-based firm has about 500 stores in 24 countries around the world. A public transport firm in Shanghai has turned to technology to disinfect its buses each day. Armed with 210 ultraviolet tubes, the company Yanggao converted a regular cleaning room into a UV light disinfection chamber, cutting a 40-minute process down to around 5 minutes. Watch this.
多少时间？
传统的消毒方式从喷洒到密闭消毒到擦拭干净，整个过程2个人也得30到40分钟。那么这个新型的消毒方式呢，大约是5到7分钟就可以消毒完成。第二个呢，它是消毒的比较彻，它的有效的对病毒的灭杀率在99.9%。那么第3个呢，它就是对这个车辆没有腐蚀，它是一种纯物理的消毒方式。
New York governor visits drive-through testing site in New Rochelle, the state's first drive-through testing site that was set up at Glen Island Park in New Rochelle, the epicenter of a coronavirus outbreak in suburban Westchester County. Watch this.
And they come here by car. Once they have an appointment, they drive right in. There are 6 lanes. And you get tested right in the car. You don't expose anyone else. And then you go back home and they call you with the results. It's prioritized for people in New Rochelle. It's open to all people in Westchester County, but priority New Rochelle and priority vulnerable populations. The facts defeat fear in this case. I understand the anxiety, but we also have to be realistic about what we're dealing with.
On March 13, New York opened the state's first drive-through coronavirus testing site in the town of New Rochelle. The aim is to address the delays faced by people trying to get tested as U.S. coronavirus testing capacity slowly ramps up and the number of reported cases continues to rise. The new site will allow medical workers to safely test patients who can drive through one of the 6 lanes and stay in their cars while getting tested using a nasal swab. Priority will be given to local residents and those with the highest risk, such as senior citizens and people with compromised immune systems. U.S. President Donald Trump announced Friday that internet giant Alphabet is creating a website where people will be able to check whether they have symptoms of the novel coronavirus. Verily Life Sciences, once a project in Google X Lab devoted to moonshot projects and now its own health business unit, is testing a tool to help triage individuals for COVID-19 testing, Google confirmed on Twitter. Trump thanked Google while declaring a state of national emergency due to the deadly coronavirus pandemic. The website will then direct users to locations where they can obtain drive-through testing, he said. San Francisco has begun setting up temporary drive-through coronavirus testing locations.
We've been in discussions with pharmacies and retailers to make drive-through tests available in the critical locations identified by public health professionals. The goal is for individuals to be able to drive up and be swabbed without having to leave your car. I want to thank Google. Google is helping to develop a website. It's going to be very quickly done, unlike websites of the past, to determine whether a test is warranted and to facilitate testing at a nearby convenient location. We have many, many locations behind us, by the way. We cover this country and large parts of the world, by the way. We're not going to be talking about the world right now, but we cover very, very strongly our country, stores in virtually every location. Google has 1,700 engineers working on this right now. They've made tremendous progress. Our overriding goal is to stop the spread of the virus and to help all Americans who have been impacted by this. Again, we don't want everybody taking this test. It's totally unnecessary. And this will pass. This will pass through, and we're going to be even stronger for it. We've learned a lot.
San Francisco has begun setting up temporary drive-thrus or drive-through coronavirus testing locations. Take a look.
Okay.
In the small German town of Gross-Gerau, you don't go to the drive-thru for a burger and fries. You go to get tested for the novel coronavirus designed to minimize exposure to medical staff and patients. The drive-in at the local hospital is one of the several unexpected ways healthcare providers are tackling a fast-spreading outbreak. There were 250 deaths recorded over the past 24 hours, taking the total to 1,266, with 17,660 infections overall. Here's more.
Wir haben uns überlegt, wie gehen wir mit dem Thema Corona um. Und da wir ein sehr junges, ein modernes Krankenhaus im Denken sind, haben wir uns verschiedene Wege überlegt. Unter anderem den Corona Drive-In, wie Sie gesehen haben, ist das letztendlich eine Möglichkeit, ohne Vermischung des Patientengutes Tests zu entnehmen. Die Patienten fühlen sich sicher, unsere Pflegekräfte, unsere Ärzte fühlen sich sicher. Sie wissen ja, bei den Deutschen ist es nun mal so, das Auto ist der sicherste Bereich. Da fühle ich mich wohl, da bin ich bei mir, ganz in meinem Bereich.
In Rome, let's find out how they are coping with the COVID-19 lockdown. Italians are beating the social isolation imposed by the country's coronavirus lockdown by taking to their windows and singing in unison, with videos of the phenomenon racking up thousands of views online. Watch this. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards on Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Jeffrey Angeles. Thanks for joining us.
And that's the news for tonight. Join us online and here again tomorrow evening, or Monday evening rather, from all of us here at Eagle News. Thank you and we'll see you soon. I'm Alma Angeles and
we are one with 25.